Getting situated here. Coming in 10 minutes early, as usual, because that's what I do. I just like that extra time to get people, to get their notifications, even though some people still don't get the notifications until hours and hours after the show's over with, which is dumb, but I don't know. YouTube's got a lot of issues they need to fix. Excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and do my greetings. So hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Glad to see y'all coming in. We're going to be talking about food powders, the making, using, and some more. But that will be in approximately 25 minutes that we'll get to that. So if you're watching this in replay and you just want to get to the main topic, then you'll know about how far to go in so you can skip over all the other stuff that I'm going to be talking about. And again, I do that to give more people time to get in here so they don't miss the main topic. However, for those who may be new to this and how I do this, because not everybody likes live shows, like I said in the pre-show show I did on the other channel, that I do take the main topic of these lives, download. Well, you have to download the whole thing. So then I take that and chop off all the stuff at the beginning and stuff at the end and all the stuff in between where there's a little extra chatter that doesn't need to be in there, edit it down and streamline it, and then put that over on the other channel. So you guys can still get all that great information in a more pre-recorded type format. So it's kind of the best of both worlds that way. It actually works really well for me because not only does it give me a chance to do a couple lives during the week, which is extra, but and I do take my notes. I do get, all prepared and all this stuff. There's still work involved, but I can just go live and just start talking and just have the fun with that. But then also have that nice, more streamlined form like I would normally put out. So that way, everybody gets something out of it that they like or in a form that they prefer. So I like it. Some people just like to see me be human, screw up and say 50,000 times and pause while I'm having a massive brain cramp and I can't remember what it was I was going to say or where I left off, or having to stop and clear my throat because, yep, I have those nodules on my vocal cord. That happens quite a bit. So you don't see that in my pre-recorded videos because they're shorter anyway, but also because that stuff all gets cut out. And all the interruptions that I might get from the dogs and Mr. Rain and whoever stops by or something out there, maybe attacking my chickens. I don't know. Brain cramps are my norm, says Tammy. And Deb says that you all love the real me. Well, I'm glad you do. The thing is, especially when I very first started my channel, my original videos, it's like I'm editing those. It's like, man, I'm just so sedate. You can tell when I was first starting that I was still a little uncomfortable with the whole talking to a camera, not to an audience. I mean, I've been in front of audiences many times, with my dance shows and being in dance myself and being a singer and playing bass and playing drums and all that stuff. Being in choirs, multiple choirs through the years, there's a difference, with that than just talking to a camera. And you don't even know if anybody cares or if anybody's listening. You're just talking to a camera. But even though I am a little more myself in my newer pre-recorded videos, I realize I'm still just talking to a camera. Where here, yes, I'm talking to a camera, but I know there's people on the other end. And so I can feel, I don't know. So this is more the real me. If you were to come to my house and have coffee or tea with me, this is going to be more like what you would have to interact with. Take it or leave it. I'm kind of goofy. I'm serious. I'm passionate about topics, and I'm Italian, so my hands wave all over the place. So yeah. part Italian, not full blood, but a good amount in there. That's where the thalassemia, the blood trait that I have called thalassemia comes from that Mediterranean descent. So, yeah, let's see. I still got a lot of time before I get into the main topic. Best friend material, in other words. Aw, thank you. I would like to think so. So, one thing I know I talked a little bit on the pre-show what about the chocolate chips that I was talking about last or Wednesday that were from when did I 2020, and you'll see there's gold in there too because some of those are butterscotch chips, right? So the jar originally was just the chocolate chips, semi-sweet ones that I had put up in 2020. And at the time, I couldn't find any milk chocolate. I prefer milk chocolate, but in this case, it was really kind of nice because when I made the cowboy cookies, I was thinking, well, those bitter or not bittersweet, but semi-sweet will be nice to mix with the butterscotch because butterscotch chips, I don't like to use them that much because it's impossible to find good organic ones, but it's a nice treat now and then. But, I figured they'd be perfect to do, like, a half and half blend in my cowboy cookies since that will help kind of break up the sweetness of the butterscotch chips, and it was definitely a good combination. Really liked it. Hi, Terry. And then we got another Tammy. I have several Tammys that follow me. And Toy, hello. Shalom. So, yeah, anyway, the other day I made that massive batch of cowboy cookies for our it was mostly for the sake well, it was twofold because you guys Mr. Rain was in here. He's not gonna be here today. He's off doing guy stuff. But anyway, he was talking about how he never gets cookies and he's such a liar. So I went ahead and made him cookies on Friday, and I'm like, "Well, this is perfect. I'll just make a big batch, then I'll have cookies to take to the potluck, where our Sabbath fellowship is." They do that once a month, and so that was the first time we got to be a part of it like that, and so I was able to make some cookies and just made the big batch, which works out really good. We still have a lot left over. I made them on Friday. I took a bunch over there. I left a bunch. There was a lot of food, so and then brought a bunch home, but I'd already given some away to my son, my daughter-in-law, my grandbaby, and I still have a lot. Oh, sent what was it? Well, Friday. Was it Friday I made them? What's today? Today's Sunday. I'm kind of confused. Oh, that's right. I made them early in the day. I started making them early in the morning. And so I was thinking, how did I send him with Patrick? But he did go up the mountain Friday. He left like at noon. So cookies had long since been all finished. And so I packaged some up for him to take up the mountain because it's about an hour drive from here to get to our other piece of property. He's still chipping away at that a little bit at a time. No pun intended, because he is doing a lot of chipping out there, as you might have seen in the wood chipper video. So have a day where we can literally all have tea, coffee, soda, and all chat. Yeah. It would be nice. It'd be nice. That's the sad part of being so far away from everyone. But I do think I'm liking this lighting. It does make it a little bit dimmer, but it seems like it softens the whole look and it's not so direct and it's not so direct in my eyes and it does definitely feel better. Do I stock up on matches or have an alternative way to start fires? Yes, we have all kinds of ways to start fires. We have matches, probably not as many matches as we do lighters. We have a lot of lighters, a lot of lighters, but we also have other ways to light fires. It's good to learn about all the really, really difficult ways to make fire, but I say stock up on lighters and or matches. They're they're easier. And if you get the refillable lighters, then you can just keep refueling them as needed. So I just did a video. In fact, I just shot a video. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't think, but it is does have to. I do mention like your making fire starters, having your own homemade fire starters. So we have some. We actually haven't needed to use them that much in the past few years, but Patrick has a video on making the the fire starters using wood shavings, old candles that you melt down, and some toilet paper tubes, and then he slices them so they're like little pucks. And then way back at the beginning of my channel, I showed making fire starters using egg cartons, dryer lint, and candle wax. Those old candles that you probably will never burn, maybe because you're worried about how toxic they are or whatever, or they're just ugly, so you're not even going to use them as decor. Maybe they're stained, or who knows? Maybe they're outdated. Just melt those down, and they make really great fire starters. And some of them will, depending on size they are, they'll burn for like 15 minutes. So usually works pretty good to get a fire going. So yeah, Deb, that's exactly my old video. It's exactly how I was doing it. And then and then Patrick has some he makes with wood shavings. So at least you're not stuck in the snow anymore. That's good, Bernadette. And I can kind of relate because I was saying in the previous show earlier today that, it's nice. Sometimes you think, I'm so sick and tired of the rain. I'll be glad when it's gone. But then you have those times it's like, we need rain because the rain washes away the snow. So it's like, typically we get snow and it's like, oh, fun, snow. People go out and build a snowman and they know to do it that day. As soon as there's enough snow to build a snowman, you go do it then. Because the next day it could start downpouring rain and then the snowman is reduced to nothing but a lump. And it's the only snow remaining in the whole neighborhood is that lump of snowman or former snowman. But man, this time it just wanted to hang on and hang on. It's still out there. We still have snow out there. But a lot of it's been washed away. So today was the first day in at least 2 weeks that the chickens actually were able to get to the front yard without having to traipse through the snow. So I can tell they've been enjoying being out there. Yeah, Bernadette, I bet you probably live in a place kind of like where I grew up. Well, even Wenatchee doesn't get as much. Central Washington can get a lot of snow. And it has distinct seasons unlike here. So where I grew up, we had the 3 months of winter. We had 3 months of spring, we had 3 months of summer, and 3 months of fall. Everything was very, very evenly spread out. And I loved that. I'm used to it here though. I mean, I've lived here since 88. I've lived here for a while. So at any rate, I'm mostly used to all the rain because our seasons are lots of rain and less rain. Those are our 2 seasons. We can on rare occasion in summer actually have a really dry spell. Typically it's only going to be a month, but in a rare occasions it could go for the whole summer, which is very rare. We've even been put on, with all the rain we get, one year we actually got put on water restrictions. It's like, that is insane for that to happen here. When you get 120 to 160 inches of annual rainfall, that's pretty insane. And like I say to everyone, some people, that means nothing to them until they actually look up what their own annual rainfall is. But one way I try to explain it to people is we get 2 to 3 times as much as Seattle area. And we know Seattle is known for rain. But, and even the UK, we get more than they get there. So yeah, it's almost constant cloud cover here, but we do get some nice, beautiful days. And what else was I going to say? So another video I shot, I had to reshoot, is making your own homemade facial mask. Unfortunately, because I'm so far ahead on the videos, it's not going to be out for another 6 weeks. But this is an all natural facial mask. There's a couple of reasons why I reshot it. One is because guess what? Guess what I found out in the older video? Well, I actually had two older videos, but the newer older video, I mentioned something that I shouldn't have mentioned because since then it has become a taboo topic. But I was adding it in for if you're going to make make this much. There's only about half of this jar. I didn't make very much. You don't want to make a ton at a time, but by adding that, you could help preserve it for a longer period of time so it doesn't mold. But you can just keep it in your fridge. But anyway, yeah, but the other reason I reshot this video too is like I wanted to do some more experimenting with making the facial mask because there's all kinds of ways you can make it according to your skin type. And I decided since I have really dry skin and like bentonite clay alone can be really harsh using that as a mask. So one of the things I did to this blend was I added some olive oil to it and I absolutely love it. Darlene, not everyone is doing well today. I'm sorry. We're getting snow dumped on us, so church got canceled. So I'm here for the duration. Well, I'm glad you're here for the duration, but I'm sorry that people are sick and you're getting a lot of snow. Our snow is finally going away, thankfully. We have 10 months of summer, says Deb. Sometimes there was a time when I was a kid, I think I would have loved having 10 months of summer. But I'm a wimp now that I live here. Because Wenatchee when I say summers in Wenatchee, they would get hot compared to here, like hot. And now I go, the last time we were going through there, I'm like, man, it's hot here. I grew up in this. I'm such a wimp now to the hot weather. But I'm not a wimp when it comes to rain and cooler weather. That is for sure. I had adjusting to the amount of rain we get here was a tough thing to do. And to the point that and it wasn't just me. And I know I've shared this before, but some of you might not have heard this before, but we get people all the time that move out here because it is a very, very beautiful area, as you might have seen in a lot of the photos, especially the photos I share that Matthew Nichols takes, like in the thumbnail of my last show. And I did link to his webpage in below that, the live show from a couple hours ago. He takes some really amazing pictures that just really demonstrates how beautiful it is here. However, there's a price to pay for that beauty, and that price is a lot of rain. That's why it's so green here. And so people think, oh, it's so beautiful there. I want to move there. And so they get a job out here, they move here, they live here for 1 year and realize they can't take it and they move. It happens. It happens all the time. People come and go because they think they love rain until they experience 9 months of it and realize, I don't love rain. It's kind of more like, what's that Ray Bradbury story? I forgot the name of it again. The Long Rain, the one where they land on this planet, they crash land on the planet, and all it does is rain, 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 and people are going crazy. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like that story, that Ray Bradbury story. I think it's called the Long Rain. Maybe. I don't remember. So we got 5 more minutes before I get into the topic. And let me see, was there anything else I wanted to mention? Oh, I am planning on I haven't made pizza in so long because typically when I make pizza, I want to make it when I have company. But I never did quite master the whole gluten-free yeast bread recipe. And, we no longer have that relationship with those gluten-free friends that we had. And so, but usually when we were doing dinners, they were there. And so I'd always want to try to make something that was gluten-free. And I still wasn't ready yet to jump into a gluten-free yeast bread pizza dough. I mean, I could have done more of a flatbread. I know that. And I thought about doing that, but, and now it's like, well, and we're not doing the family meals once a month right now. I've decided to take a break from that for this year and kind of see how things go because things have just been really strange and crazy, not just within the family, but just all the way around and kind of coming up with some new schedules. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and make pizza for us tomorrow. And so I don't have to worry about the crust being gluten free. So I'm going to make my standard bread recipe that I was talking about in my Wednesday show. I didn't think to link to it, but that's what I use for my. I also use that same recipe for making my pizza crust. And I'll probably make, I usually have extra when I make that. So I'll do the pizza crust and then I'll take the extra and make breadsticks out of that. But I thought about making some more pepperoni because I have a video on that, how to make some pork-free pepperoni. But I think this time I'm going to make it more like a pork-free Italian sausage. So I haven't decided if I'm going to use just beef, which I think I will. But beef and turkey mixed together, or any red meat mixed with turkey, makes a really good pork replacement, in my personal opinion. But you can use whatever meat you want. I haven't tried. I do have a package of ground chicken I got from Butcher Box that I haven't tried yet. I'm thinking about maybe trying that the next time I do a blend and see how that turns out. But anyway, I'm so excited to make pizza tomorrow. I would do it today, but we still have some meatloaf and what was the other? Oh, not tuna, a salmon noodle casserole I made a couple days ago. Because instead of when the boys moved out and it's only the two of us, I didn't stop making meals for a whole family. I kept making them that way so that I could either freeze a bunch up or we can just eat on it for several days. As long as I have a couple different ones to choose from so it doesn't get too old, I don't mind doing that. And then sometimes I might put some up, like dehydrating, especially with the experimenting I've been doing with the dehydrating different meals. So, I didn't think to try dehydrating a chunk of meatloaf and see how that turns out. I bet that's really good. Just to eat it as is. I think I'll try that. I don't know how much is left in there because I haven't been eating dinner. It's just been Patrick eating dinner. So it's lasting even longer. But I'm definitely going to have a piece of pizza when I make the pizza. I haven't had my homemade pizza in so long and I miss it. But I got all those olives and lots of yummy stuff. I've got some sweet, those little mini bell peppers that I get from the organic ones I get from Misfits Market. And so I like using those on the pizza because it adds some pretty color to the top of it. So yeah, anyway, and I have videos not just on my bread recipe that I use for the pizza crust, but also on my sauce, which is the same thing. I make a red sauce. I don't have any real specific hardcore recipe. It's just I just start throwing everything together and it might be a spaghetti sauce. It might be a sauce for my homemade raviolis. It might be a sauce for my homemade lasagna, or it might be a sauce for my homemade pizza, which is what it's going to be tomorrow. 66 in a few months, says Deb. See, my birthday is end of next month, and I'm going to be 59. So I'll have one more year before I hit the 60s. And then Patrick turned 60 this last August. So yeah. Anyway, that's where we are. And let's go ahead and start getting into this topic. Now, so we're talking about food powders. I have lots of videos about making and using different types of food powders, and I'll get into that. But what I would like you guys to do is go ahead in the comments and put it in all caps. Put what some of your favorite food powders are. Now, this doesn't have to be just ones you make. This can be ones that you prefer to buy, even if it's like milk, like a whole milk powder. But I also linked to several videos in the description box. One of them was the one I did about a year ago, I think it was, on making and using food powders and my favorite ones to make and how I use them. I just kind of did a rough run through of those. And then I linked to a few specific ones, but there's a lot more out there. Like I have one I think one of the ones I linked to was the pumpkin powder, the egg powder, how I dehydrate eggs and then powder them up and use them, the citrus peel powder, and at a few more videos, and then I think I did one on how to use dairy powders and the different types. So, though I've made a few different dairy powders, because of the cost of getting a good organic dairy of any kind and then dehydrating it up, it's not really worth it for me to do it that way. It's I've done it just to try it to know I can do it, but it's more um worth it to me to purchase the organic dairy powders, when I can get them organic, I should say that. Not all of them are all organic, but I do have some good quality dairy powders. Like I have butter powder, I have heavy cream powder. That one I do recommend purchasing because to take those kind of things and turn them into a powder, you got to use a completely different method that nobody, I think the standard person doesn't have access to. They don't even use freeze drying for that. They use a process called spray drying. And I've tried making a heavy cream powder, and while it dehydrated up good, it powdered. Did it powder? No, that one didn't powder up good. When I tried to powder it, it turned to butter, and it was like fat. It wasn't dry. It wasn't a dry powder. I've done half and half. That that turned out okay. I recently tried it and I'm like, it's kind of gritty. I just mixed a little water and I didn't heat it. I didn't put it in the blender, but it would probably be good to use if you're going to dehydrate it yourself to use in a gravy, something you're going to cook. Um, what else have I done? I've made cheese powder. Did I bring that in? I didn't bring the cheese powder. I got all these orange things in here. None of them are, I have one that's green, but I'll show that in a bit, but it's not actually a powder. Um, let's see, what was I saying? I was talking about the half and half. Yeah, it could turn out kind of I've done cream cheese. That turned out all right. And the yogurt turned out okay. So some of this stuff turns out fine, rehydrating it and stuff. Some of it is so. The whole milk powder turned out great, but again, for me, it's just not worth it to do that. But I wanted to know I can and show people that they can. So especially if you have your own dairy animals, yes, that is one way you can put up your excess milk is to dehydrate it, and it would take up less room in storage. But of course, like any dehydrated or dried dairy powder, it's going to take on that dried dairy taste. Some of it tastes way better than others. It depends on like making yourself. When I made it myself out of some organic milk, I think it was Organic Valley milk I had. It turned out just as good as the organic whole milk, the quality organic whole milk powder I have bought. I say don't buy low fat or fat free milk powders. They're not only gross, it's just silly. It doesn't make sense. Get the whole milk powder. It tastes better, it's better for you. But that's if you're going to purchase it. So anyway, if you'd like to know how to use those, I recommend you check out that video I'll be linking to down below because I do use them. I try to save a lot of it for when I absolutely have to, depend on it. But at the same time, I try to work through them. And I like using them quite a bit for making gravies, like a white sauce for such as that salmon noodle casserole I recently made. And that was some salmon that Patrick had caught, and I had canned it up, and I canned them in quart jars. And so I had opened this jar only for something. Maybe it was another salmon noodle casserole. Used only half of it, and it still made a lot. And then stuck the rest in the freezer because I didn't know if I was ever going to work through all that right away. So I stuck the rest of it in the freezer. But yeah, so using your dairy powders for making those kind of sauces, like a cream of mushroom soup/sauce or whatever, that instead of buying that canned stuff, you just make your own. It's super easy. So let me look at my list. I want to make sure I don't forget anything. I think what I'll do is the first thing I'll do, and you can see people are already throwing out their ideas of some of their favorite things to put up or that they've done. But the things that I make and then use would be the apple powder. This works best if you have a more tart apple that's not super, super sweet. The more sugary your fruit is, the harder, especially if you're just dehydrated. If you're freeze drying, it will always powder up beautifully. But if you're dehydrating, a lot of your fruits aren't going to powder up very well. But I wouldn't want everything powdered anyway. But I do powder up some of the apples I dehydrate from our tree. Zucchini, pumpkin, as I showed you, egg, cheese. And I have a video on that. I think that's one of the ones I linked to down below. Bone broth. Well, I don't really powder the bone broth, but you can. I just flake it up. I don't bother powdering it. It doesn't matter either way because of what it is. The citrus peel, rhubarb. So I dehydrate raw rhubarb and powder it up. That is of everything I do. The two things I do the most of powdering up, drying and powdering up, are the eggs, the pumpkin powder, and the rhubarb powder, because that's the only way I'm going to use those kind of preserved things is in a powder form. Then there's horseradish. Well, that's probably the only way I put up horseradish now is to dehydrate it and powder it. You can even just sprinkle it on something as is, or add water to it and let it rehydrate. And now you've got some mustard sauce, basically. I don't powder my own onion and garlic. I dry some onion and some garlic, but that's something that I'm more apt to purchase: organic granulated onion and organic granulated garlic. I don't like getting the powders. I do dehydrate and powder up like onion skins and just mix it in with the granulated onion I already have, just to make the most out of that. Let's see here. So the horseradish, I did mention the yogurt, milk, and half and half. I've made beet powder, and what was the other thing I made? Beet powder makes a nice, beautiful burgundy color, and you can use that for even coloring foods. Oh, red cabbage. I did write it down. Red cabbage makes a nice purpley color, um, or more purple than the beet powder. That can also again be used as a lovely food coloring. It's actually quite beautiful. And then, I mentioned the onion skin, and then my Chinese 5 colored peppers. That's what I do now. I was used to cut them up and freeze them, and like to use them in pieces because of all the pretty colors. You get a little purple, a little yellow, a little orange, a little red in there, and add that to foods. But now I just powder it up. It kind of makes more of an orange hot pepper, but I love it. I love, love, love it. It is so tasty. I like it better than cayenne pepper. And I would say it's hotter than cayenne pepper as well. So you have to be a little more careful with it, but I love the flavor of it. I don't know how to describe it in comparison to cayenne. It just, to me, it just has a nicer flavor. And I love cayenne pepper. Um, Boy, especially when I was pregnant with my oldest, I ate it on and in everything. Everything. Even while I was nursing. So that, from the time he was a little bitty, he liked hot, spicy food. I'm talking little bitty. So he eats a lot. He probably eats hotter stuff than I do, which is funny. But I mean, I'm not a wimp, but I'm not like my dad, who could eat the hottest hot pepper there was out there. He liked all that stuff. I don't know, and I don't know what the hottest hot pepper there was back then, when he was still alive, but I have some beets that I need to dehydrate and powder. But yeah, and then you could, obviously you can take your beet powders and add them to smoothies and stuff, but for me to do that, it'd be more of like something I'd like to use as a natural food coloring, you know. Like, let's say you're making some kind of chocolates and you want to add a pretty color, you could use, well, I don't know if the cabbage powder might add a weird taste, but the beet powder surprisingly can go well with sweet stuff. Well, beets are kind of sweet anyway. So anyway, and then another video I think I put down below was when I was taking different things and making baby food powders out of them. So to me, that is like if you've got grandbabies, you got your own babies, that is in my personal opinion, that is like the best way to put up your own baby food. So you're taking good natural foods, either straight from your garden or something that you've purchased organically, and you cook it up, and then you dehydrate it, or excuse me, After you cook it, just process it in the blender, and then you can spread it out on your silicone sheets and dehydrate it up, and then put it back in the blender again. Obviously, the blender's clean and dry by this point, and, um, and then powder it up, and it will take up so little room in your cabinet, and you only need a little bit. Add some water, let it sit for a little bit, and you've got instant baby food. And it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's cheap and it's healthy, and you know exactly what's in it. And so, if I was to ever have babies again, which is definitely not going to happen, but if I had that to do all over again, that's how I would do it. What I used to do, what I did with my firstborn was I did buy a bunch of baby food, well, not knowing any better about baby food, assuming it was all healthy stuff, but I bought it mostly so I could have those cute little jars. And then after I had enough jars, after we worked through that, then I would cook up fruits, vegetables, or whatever, and then make a just a baby food and put it in the jars and then freeze them. That worked really good. That way I could just cook up a whole bunch. But you gotta depend on the freezer, and it's gonna take up more room than the dehydrated. But I didn't have a dehydrator back then. That was a long time ago. My oldest son is turning his birthday's the day no, it's 3 days before my birthday, or 2 days. Excuse me. No, it's the day before my birthday. You know why I'm getting confused? Because our anniversary is is on the 31st. My birthday's on the 29th, and my oldest son's birthday is the 28th. I didn't intentionally plan my birthday to be close to my anniversary. I wasn't even thinking about it. It just I didn't realize it until we're decorating the church. I'm like, somebody goes, "Oh, happy birthday." And I'm like, "Oh, today's my birthday." What was I thinking? And of course, I didn't plan for Ryan to be born the day before my birthday. It's the way it happened. So anyway, thus my confusion. But yeah, he's going to be turning 33. And then my youngest will be turning 30 in April. So anyway, but yeah, the baby food thing, you can do that with not just your fruits and vegetables, like some common one like carrots and green beans. I think those are the ones I was showing. The carrots and the green beans and squash, like your pumpkin, your butternut, your spaghetti squash, but it obviously anything that you can, process up and dehydrate and then easily powder. Like I said earlier, if you're just dehydrating, your fruit powders they're not going to powder up very well. They can clump and get hard if you're not careful in your jars. But you can also make baby cereals. I mean, what's in baby cereals? Rice, oats that they've just processed up really small and then throw a bunch of garbage in there. You can do that without the garbage. Just process it. Just take oats and process them in a blender. Take your cooked rice. I didn't do this one. I did this with the oats, and Jace loved the oats. Next month, Rebecca. So I don't usually say my birthday because I don't expect people to remember or to send me anything. I don't. In fact, on my on my Facebook account, I hid my birthday years ago. Years ago. Because I don't care. It's not a big deal to me. But at any rate, it's only for the purpose of keeping track of how old I am. So what was I saying? So the cereal, yeah, just take some rolled oats, throw them in the blender and powder them up. Or whatever other thing you'd prefer to use for powder. And like coffee grinders work well. It's just I like using a blender if I'm doing a bunch because you can do a lot more at a time. If you're doing a little bit, like you're just wanting to sample, coffee grinders are great because they work better with small amounts where your blender isn't going to work as well with a small amount. You got to have more in there for it to work well. Oh, yours is the 31st of May. See, now our anniversary is the 31st of March. But yeah, so anyway, now, other things that I dehydrate up that some people would powder that I don't prefer to powder, but you can, would be things like your herbs. I like to flake my herbs up, but some people prefer to excuse me, some people prefer to powder them. Now, if I'm going to use them like a medicinal herb and I want to make them into a capsule or mix them in with water, then I would powder it up. If I want to take it that way, because maybe I don't like the taste of the herb and I don't want to I don't wanna have it in a tea or something like that. Then I would powder it up, either encapsulate it, which I don't really like doing that because it's a waste of capsules and it's a pain. So then I could just take that and oh, Diametra's here. Hello, Diametra. Good to see you. And then just throw it in a little bit of water, if I'm needing that herb for something, and just drink it down really fast. Do the same thing with the eggshell powder and the diatomaceous earth. That's that's typically how I work that. But right here, I do have my mixed greens, and so you can see that they are flaked. They're not powdered because I don't like because of how I use that. I don't like having it in a powder form because I'm usually adding it to sauces, to gravies, to casseroles, to soups, and I prefer to have the little pieces in there rather than to have a powder that turns everything in there green. So that's just my personal preference. Some people do like to powder those things up. And then I'll even add it to meatloaf when I'm making a meatloaf, to hamburger patties, just to get more nutrition into whatever it is I'm making. So if you're new to my channel, this is I won't remember everything that's in here. I'm just going to give you a few uh, examples. One of the number one things that's in here is nettle leaf and dandelion leaf, but I have other things like grape leaves, strawberry leaves, kale. If I'm growing rutabaga or beets or anything like that, in the year that I'm making this, I'll dehydrate those up and add them to them. Any of your good, healthy greens can go in there. I just don't add anything that's really bitter. I mean, dandelion leaf is not very bitter, and if you've got it mixed with enough stuff, you're not going to taste that bitter taste. But, like, I wouldn't put, like, feverfew in there because, ew, I don't want that in my food. That'd be nasty. That'd make it taste terrible. And then a couple other things. I already mentioned the broth. I prefer to just flake up the broth, but you can powder it. It would take up less room in your pantry if you powder it. I just don't usually do that. I've done it a couple times, but usually I just flake it up kinda small with my fingers and then store it in the jar. And then the one I definitely never powder are my tomatoes. So the tomatoes, what I do is I process them in a blender first. So they're already, a puree. I leave the skins on, I leave the seeds. I don't go through all the work of taking off all that good stuff because I'm just going to process it down anyway. It doesn't matter. And I just blend it all up and then pour it onto my dehydrator trays and then dry it up. And when it's fully dry, it's actually a really yummy snack like that. But once it's fully dry, then I just flake it. Now, here, if you're new to my channel and you don't know this, here's the reason why I do not ever powder the tomato flakes. And that is because even though they take up less room than the flakes, you're going to end up with, unless you keep your jar consistently vacuum sealed. So let's say you're working through a jar of your own homemade tomato powder, you're going to want to vacuum seal it between every use, because if you don't, it will turn into a brick. But if you flake it up, that doesn't happen. Now, I still vacuum seal all my jars that are going back into long-term storage, but the jar, and it'll be a quart jar, the jar I'm working through, I don't, once I've opened it and I start working through it, I don't vacuum seal. I've never needed to. It never turns to a brick in the jar. And several people have shared with me before too that they did that with tomatoes. They powdered it and put it in a jar, and then they opened it, were working through it, and then didn't work through it fast enough. It turned into a brick. And oh, thank you, Joni. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yay. We do appreciate that. So, um, little hip. I haven't seen all those different stickers that you can get. That's cute. Let's see. Uh But the thing with the tomatoes is that it doesn't have to be. Let's see, I've experienced bricks when we did rhubarb powder. Really? That's weird because, well, my rhubarb powder does kind of clump a little bit, but it's easy enough for me to stick a fork, a spoon, or even a chopstick down there and just loosen it up. I had to do that with the pumpkin powder. But the difference is that you can still do that. Same thing with the apple powder. That one will kind of want to clump and get hard if you're not working through it fast enough, but I can still get it out. The tomato powder is different. When I say it's a brick, it's a brick. It doesn't just look like a brick in color. It is a brick, and you're chiseling it, like literally chiseling it. It's terrible. But anyway, so it doesn't need to be powdered to make a sauce out of it anyway, because it was already pureed before you made it, before you dehydrated it. So all you got to do is add water, and then whatever else you're going to do, like if you're making a soup, tomato soup. I keep saying one of these days I'm going to make tomato soup with some of my tomato flakes, but I haven't done that yet. Mostly just sauces. I'm just making sauces. In fact, I finally the time before, when I made some kind of tomato-based sauce, I'd finally used up the last of my canned pureed tomatoes. Finally, because I had so much put up, because I like to stay way ahead on those tomatoes. But I finally was able to make my sauce, the last sauce I made. I think it was for lasagna, out of nothing but dried ingredients, all dried tomato flakes. Now, before, when I was making the sauce with the canned tomatoes, I was still adding the flakes to them to help it thicken up, to absorb some of that excess water and make a nice thick sauce. So it works. You can use it that way too if you like to can tomatoes as well. Let's see. If you have to use powder to make bouillon cubes, why not just use powder? Serious question. I have no clue. Yeah, just use the powder, because the cubes can take a while. I haven't bought bouillon cubes in so long. Now I do all the bone broth now more and more, and that's what I use mostly. But I still have like the little jars of the organic broth. That's it's like a concentrate you can get from Costco. I'm sure other places sell it, but I know Costco has it. They have chicken and they have beef. And mostly I love the beef, but I get the chicken too. And I'll use that. But I forget. Yeah, better than bouillon. That's what it's called. That's a good one. But yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing, making something like that. But I just use, if I've got the broth, like I've got some beef broth now. I love that I finally have some beef broth that I made myself. And so the last time I was making something, whatever it was, what was it? Oh, it was my Polish sausage cabbage potato dish, where I made the sausage using, I don't remember what red meat I used that day, and some turkey ground, and then added my spices. I don't know if I did a video on it. I cannot remember. I just added some different spices to get that more Polish sausage flavor. And then I took half of it and used it for that meal, and then took the rest and froze it. And I saw the rest of it the other day in the freezer. I'm like, I'm going to make this for dinner tonight. And so, but I still like to add a little bit of broth to it to give it some kind of liquid so it doesn't burn on the bottom as it's baking on the wood stove. So I put a spoonful of the beef broth I had just made, bone broth. And that turned out pretty good. Just put that in there, add a little bit of water. And then, and then the thing is with that, you can add whatever. I actually like using the powder better than the paste anyway, and then a cube, because it dissolves so much easier. And then you can add whatever seasonings you would want. I haven't done this yet, but I would take that butter when I get a chance and I remember, you like the flavor of like the better than bouillon, read the ingredients and see what kind of seasonings they use in there. I'm guessing they put in like garlic and onion and salt. I'm not sure what else they add, but they probably have some other stuff in there. So, so Tammy makes the cubes. Oh, that's why Diametra was asking the question. Sorry, Tammy, I missed your thing on that. I didn't realize you had said that. So, okay, I mentioned that. Let me go back and talk about a few of the things that I've already mentioned that I like to dehydrate and powder up, and how I use them, even though in the individual videos that you'll see, especially probably that I probably go through plenty enough in that video I linked at the top, but, like rhubarb powder, the number one way I use that, and this is why it's now the number one way I put up my rhubarb, is that it makes a excellent lemon juice replacement in pies and other kind of desserts where you would add, a little bit of lemon juice to help bring out the flavor of whatever fruit it is. Typically it's something you're gonna add to like an apple pie or an apple crisp or an apple Betty. And, well, apple Betty, usually it's like I always used orange juice in that, like a concentrated orange juice. But, um, anyway, I can just throw that rhubarb powder in there, and it's cheap. It's actually free because it came from my garden. And it makes an excellent flavor. It works out so good. I love it in my apple pies. Okay, somebody's saying something about needing prayer. Oh, sorry, 4-day homestead. I'm sorry you're not feeling good. Yes, we pray that you get well soon. So, anyway, so yeah, rhubarb powder, that's the number one thing I use it for. But of course, any of these powders, especially like your fruit ones and your beet powder and whatever can be added to a smoothie if you like that kind of thing. But anyway, apple powder, I like to add to homemade pancakes. Like I try to when I'm making pancakes, I mix it up every time. So we watch Jace the last Saturday of every month. So now the thing is on Saturday. I think I said that. So what I do is I plan to make pancakes that day and I'll do them different every time. And he loves grandma's pancakes. So I might do a pumpkin pancakes with my pumpkin powder or an apple pancakes or something like that. And try to just kind of switch it up, have it be a little bit different. And so the apple and the pumpkin I love using in the pancakes. I've got a lot of uses for the pumpkin. I actually finally made my first pumpkin pie using just the pumpkin powder this lot, in the fall for it was either for Feast of Tabernacles one night or it was for Thanksgiving, I don't recall, but I used the pumpkin powder. It turned out great. Loved it. It was so good. And so from now on, and this is all homegrown pumpkin, this is the only way I'll put up my pumpkin now. Takes up far less room than canning it and or freezing it. It's great. So what are some other things that I have in here? The cheese powder, mostly that's something I'll just throw in with the powdered eggs to make like a scrambler, or an omelet, and you just throw them both in there. You got your egg powder, you add some water, you add some, a spoonful of the powdered cheese, cheddar cheese powder, and then whatever else you want to add to it. You can just rehydrate it in milk if you want to make it more rich. So, that's the most common way I use the cheese. I've tried it on popcorn. It doesn't stick very well. It's good, but it doesn't stick very well. But it's still good. And oh yeah, and of course I use the cheese powder in making like a homemade mac and cheese to make the sauce. It's great that way. It's powdered up. You just mix it in with your milk and all that and just cook it until everything's kind of dissolved and melted in and it works out really great. And so I have a lot of cheese powder put up, a lot of egg powder put up, but I'm trying to work through my egg powder and just sell a lot of my fresh eggs right now because I want to get that worked through. And then, because I've had it for a few years, this is just the one I keep in the kitchen that I'm working through and I don't vacuum seal it, but the ones in storage are vacuum sealed. And that way I can keep paying for the feed, and then once all of my chickens are laying heavy, then I can start putting up some fresh powder and then vacuum sealing it. But yeah, I've had it back in storage for a long time. I'm saying this is like 3 or 4 years old. Still looks great. I have had people tell me theirs have turned brown, and I don't know why they would do that unless they weren't keeping it vacuum sealed, but I don't keep this vacuum sealed. I'm gonna scroll up here. Somebody either asked a question. What did I miss it? Where'd it go? I'm not seeing it. Or I saw something that caught my eye, and I don't know what it was now. See, so how do you make the powders? Okay, so first of all, dye. I have a whole bunch of videos in the description box, and they're not even all of my powder videos. They're just where I show how I dehydrate. I don't have a freeze dryer, though I've powdered up freeze dried foods that I bought from Mother Earth Products. Um, it's a lot more expensive to either buy a freeze dryer and do that or to buy the freeze dried, but I do like keeping some on hand for special things. And I powdered up like freeze dried raspberries for adding to my homemade chocolates if I want a raspberry cream chocolate. But yeah, it's just a matter of dehydrating and throwing in your blender. And if it's freeze dried, same thing. Just throw it in your blender and it will powder up great. But just know that, like, fruits do not dehydrate up always in a form that can be powdered because of the high sugar content. So in that case, if you do happen to have a freeze dryer, that would be or you prefer to be like me and not invest in a freeze dryer and just stock up on a few of your favorite freeze dried fruits that you want to use for flavors. So I have or things that like we can't grow pineapple, we can't grow banana. We can grow raspberries, but I still stock up on those. I we can grow cherries, but we don't get a lot. So those are my 4 favorite fruits. Oh, and mangoes. I wouldn't say they're my favorite, but I do like having the freeze-dried mangoes, and I get all those from Mother Earth Products, which you'll always find linked in my description box. The thing I really like about Mother Earth Products, a small family-owned business, US based, and they're really good people, but I like the fact that they sell things in different sizes. So you don't have to buy this big number 10 can of something and find out you really hate it. And especially if you're considering getting a freeze dryer, I still recommend doing that and trying all the different things there are in smaller amounts to find out, is it going to be worth it to me to purchase a freeze dryer? To me, it's not. There's not enough freeze dried foods that I like, and plus a plethora of other reasons why I will never own a freeze dryer. Even if someone gave one to me, I'm not sure if I'd keep it. But even though I was offered a free one and I turned it down for, a video review exchange, not going to do it. And I have videos on that if you'd like to know why. But for those people that are really sold on freeze dried foods and want to go that route, I still highly recommend do your research about freeze dryers, learn all you can about them before you make the investment, and find out if you're even going to like any of those foods. So the other thing, freeze dried fruits can be used for powdered up is making like cream pies. I've done that before too. So, like I have a video out there somewhere on making a raspberry cream pie. And a raspberry chocolate. I have both those videos. They're several years old, but they're out there. You can find them on my main channel. Just Rain Country, not Rain Country Live. That's what this is. So anyway, what else did I want to talk about? Um but yeah, Di, if you want to learn more, you can go check out the videos. Instead of me covering that all over again, you can go check out the videos I put in the description box down below to learn more. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about those kind of powders that you can purchase. So I talked a little bit about the freeze dried things and then making your own powders, but some that I purchased, and I also mentioned the dairy powders. So I don't have to go into all that again, but that's when it comes to that, since we don't have dairy animals, it's worth it to me to go ahead and buy those. Like Azure Standard is getting a broader amount of organic food powders in. Like they have the whole milk powder, they have the A2A2 whole milk powder, they have the buttermilk powder. I seem like there's something else that they have. Um, I think they have an organic cheese powder as well. And I think it's like a white cheddar kind of thing. But you can stock up on those. But yeah, the butter powder, I actually really like that for making biscuits. And it is a great alternative if you don't have any fresh butter on hand. Just add water to you can even drizzle it on popcorn, add a little extra water, drizzle it on popcorn. It's decent. It's pretty good. Or even sprinkle it dry. Well, you don't want to sprinkle it dry on your popcorn. It's got to have butter to stick to. But I've actually done that too. Don't tell anybody, but I put butter on my popcorn, like real melted butter, then took the butter powder dry and sprinkled that on so it was extra buttery. It was super good. Super good. I've only done that once or twice, but it was super duper good. I do not know, Lucy, if they have a lactose-free whole milk. I'm not sure. The important thing, though, to understand, people who have a lactose intolerance, I think that what you have to look at is getting a good, well, probably shouldn't say it, but the RAW milk, where all the things that help to digest the milk have not been killed off. You don't want people who have lactose issues usually can't have pasteurized milk, but they can have the non-pasteurized milk. I'll put it that way. So, and I don't know if you can get a non-pasteurized milk powder. I'm not sure. Now I want popcorn. Me too. Now that I've been talking about it, but I'm gonna have to take a longer break from the popcorn. My stomach, my intestinal issues I've been having, or well, stomach issues I've been having, have really been doing so much better these last few weeks since I started my fasting regimen. It's really been helping. But the last time I had the popcorn, it still kind of made me feel a little bloaty. So I'll wait a little bit longer, let things continue to heal. But yeah, so instead, I have grits with butter and salt, and it's yummy. Like those, I get the grits from Azure Standard as well. And I know I told you guys, but I'm going to say it again, how excited I am that, and I think I say it in tomorrow's Listen App maybe, how excited I am that we're now finally going to have an Azure Standard drop point in our small remote town finally after all of these years. Several different people have tried to get it up and off the ground, and they're finally going to make it work. So glad it's going to save me so much in shipping costs. I'm so glad. Anyway, let's see. Was there something else? There was something else. Oh, the peanut butter powder. Oh, well, first let me come back to the dairy powder. I forgot to mention other ones I bought and used. Now I have the cream cheese powder. And now these are ones not just the ones I've tried making before, but ones I've bought and used. So the cream cheese powder is a pretty good option to have on hand. And the heavy cream, love having that heavy cream powder on hand. The buttermilk powder, the butter powder, the milk, whole milk powder, and sour cream powder. Now, again, remember, if you're talking powder, any powdered dairy, it doesn't matter what kind it is. It doesn't even matter how high quality it is. You're still going to end up with a little bit of that powdered milk taste. It's unavoidable, but there are some out there that have a better quality. For the sour cream powder, I have tried Judy's. It's JUDEE apostrophe S. And you can find them on Amazon. And Judy's has a lot of good products like that. And then the cream cheese, I know that Anthony's Goods, also found on Amazon, also has a lot of good. They're getting more and more of that kind of stuff too. They have a heavy cream powder. That's right. So I've got heavy cream powder from Hoosier Hill Farm, but now Anthony's has it and they have a better price. So yeah, so those are some of the things that let's see. We have an Azure drop. I have never used Azure. Yeah, using it's not a subscription, Lucy. You just go to the Azure Standard. They're always linked in my description box. You find on there, you can find a drop that's closest to you and place an order through that drop. Now, some places will require, some of the coordinators might require you to contact them, but basically it's how it works. So, but they'll let you know if you go to the Azure Standard site, if you need to contact the coordinator, like they'll have their email address or something in there. So I've already hooked up with a lady local because somebody tagged me in her Facebook post, and that's how I found out about it. And like, yes. And so now I'm officially added. I even got an email from Azure letting me know I've been added to the drop point. So how the drop point works is, we used to do this with Glory Bee, because Glory Bee is very similar to Azure Standard. I know I'm kind of getting off topic, but I'll go ahead and cover this. And you have a coordinator that will be wherever the drop point is. There's some person that's somewhat local that's going to coordinate that drop point and it may be at their house or a place that they select where a big truck can pull in and park and unload all the stuff. And then you, as the purchaser, the one who ordered the stuff, needs to show up and then pay. Well, if it's already prepaid, I don't think it matters. You can prepay online. I used to pay for Glory Bee, I'd just write a check to the lady here. She would pay in a big lump sum to Glory Bee, and then we'd all bring our checks and pay her and then pick up the products from her house. Um, I think with Azure, you can pay for it online and then it's already paid for. All you got to do is meet at a certain place at a certain time to pick up your stuff. So until this, our closest one is 60 miles away. And also at the time of day, time of week, that it would be near impossible for me to make it in there and just not worth the time and the expense of driving in there. But this will be simple because we live in a small town and I'm not positive yet where the drop point is going to be, but it should be pretty painless for one of us to run over there and pick it up. So I'm just very, very excited. So they are really good people. I know some people have complained about a few things like, and this one kind of got me was because I've never, well, I'm not going to say I've never had issues with their grains, but anything, you got to realize that the grains that they sell are organic and non GMO, which means sometimes you can get weevils. It's rare, but it happens. But I learned recently that even the grains that are grown organically by a lot of places, when they're there, then stored in a silo, they spray them with pesticides. So now they're no longer organic. They might have been grown organically, but now they've sprayed with pesticides and that's to keep the weevils out when they're storing them. So I actually take that as a good sign. Weevils aren't going to kill you. It kind of grosses us out if we have weevils in your stuff and you try to keep them out, and they will eat all your grains if left in there long enough and they'll keep populating. I had that happen with a bag of spelt, but it wasn't stuff I got from Azure. It was bad. A bucket of spelt. Thankfully they didn't contaminate my other buckets of grains. And then I've had I think the only thing I ever got from Azure that ended up having weevils, either I'm assuming they were already present, was one bag of popcorn. But I bought a lot of popcorn from them over the years and never had that happen, other than that one. But again, it's organic, non-GMO, and so it can happen to anyone with anything. And so I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as actually a good thing because it proves that they're not spraying a bunch of crud on their grains after they get all this stuff in. Will using oxygen absorbers kill weevils? I've actually wondered this. I don't know if I would assume so because like any animal, they have to have oxygen, but any land animal, I'll say. Well, even water animals have to have oxygen. They just get it in a different way. So I would assume so. But the best way to prevent the weevils or to kill them is to take your grains from any place when you buy them, put them in the freezer for a week, depending on the size. Like usually I have at least 25 to 50 pounds. If you have enough space, if you don't have enough space, you might have to put them in smaller bags, freeze them for a week, get them out, and then let them get some air because as they're basically thawing out, because you don't want them to build up moisture when you go to package them up. And that can be a good way to make sure that if there are any weevils in there, because you won't know until they start hatching out. And nobody, even the people that sell the stuff, aren't going to know. And the reason why is because weevils, they lay their eggs inside of the individual grains. So you won't notice by looking at it if there's a weevil egg in there. But then once they start hatching out, that's when you'll find out. They'll hatch, they'll eat their way out of the grain, and then they'll get out, and then they'll make more weevils, and then the process keeps repeating until all the grains are gone. And if you start seeing a lot of powdery stuff in your grains, that's a good sign there's weevils in there because that shows that they're eating through the grains. So yeah. So when we found that with the popcorn, I froze it. I froze the popcorn and then sifted everything out so that there were no bugs left in it, and no dead bugs either. Got them all sifted out of there. It's a little extra work, but it happens. But for the most part, I've been very, very, very happy with Azure Standard. I get the best price on whole grains. They're organic, they're non-GMO, and especially now that I can. Yes, TM. I just answered that. Maybe you didn't hear that. Yes, you can kill the weevils by freezing. So yeah, just throw them in the freezer. It could just be overnight if it's a small bag. I just leave it for at least a week if it's a big bag to make sure it gets frozen all the way through, that every single grain gets solidly frozen and has been frozen for a little while to make sure they're dead. But that works great. Weevils, well, very funny. It's funny. I was thinking about that commercial the other day. I can't remember why. But anyway, weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Yes, I remember those. I don't know if I ever had any of those. Maybe I had a couple. I don't remember. Those were goofy. Goofy, goofy toys. Okay, so then I was trying to move on to the peanut butter powder is another fun thing. I don't know. I haven't bought it in years because I have a bunch stored up. And I had bought it years ago when I was buying stuff from Honeyville, and Honeyville used to have an organic peanut butter powder. They don't sell that anymore. I don't even know if Honeyville's still a thing. I stopped doing business with them, and found Mother's products and like them better. But anyway, they did have the organic. It was sold in bags, and so then they were plastic bags too. So then I would take those and store them in quart jars and vacuum seal them. If you don't vacuum seal your peanut butter powder, it does go rancid just like peanut butter can. So depriving your anything that's got fat in it, because even peanut butter powder, even though a lot of the fat's been removed, there's still fat in there. And by vacuum sealing it, you're going to prevent it from turning rancid. So I've had some where the seal, because I was vacuum sealing a lot of it up before I realized the importance of putting some kind of barrier over the top of the powder before putting the lid on and then vacuum sealing. Because if you don't put that barrier on any of your powders that you're trying to put up for a long period of time and you're wanting to vacuum seal, then the powder, as you're vacuum sealing, will pull out from under the lid and form around the rim of the jar. And while it may seem at first that you got a good seal, it's not going to last because of that powder there. It's not a good hard seal. And so if you put it in storage and it seems sealed, it might still come unsealed. So I had that happen with a couple of jars of peanut butter powder, but thankfully it was only the powder on the very top, because I caught it in time, that ended up going rancid. So the stuff that was catching more of the oxygen when it lost its seal. So I just scooped that out and threw it away, and the rest of it was good. But obviously scooped down a little farther than that to make sure I was getting all of it. But that worked, at least I was able to salvage it. But yeah, you'll want to vacuum seal your peanut butter powder. I don't know if there's any other good places that sell a good organic peanut butter powder, because I haven't had, I just don't use it that much. I mostly use it for when I'm making the peanut butter chocolate. So, okay, the barrier. Sorry, Bernadette. I was actually going to come back to that. So thank you for reminding me, because I almost forgot. So the barrier is simple. All I use is, I should have brought in a sealed jar so I could show you, but I personally just use some whatever clean, obviously cotton fabric that I already have on hand, cut small enough that I can just place over the top of the powder. But if you don't have that, then you can take a chunk of paper towel, a napkin, paper napkin, a muffin. Some people like to use the paper muffin liners, the mini ones, because they'll usually fit perfectly right over the top of your powder. And then what that does is it creates a barrier, so that then when you put your lid on and you go to vacuum seal, it prevents that powder from coming up and then trying to work out from under that lid, so that you can then get a good seal that way. So whatever works for you, whatever you can just lay across the top that's cheap. Like I say, I've always got cotton fabric. And so when I open up a jar that has that, then I'll just wash that out and hang it up to dry and use it in another jar later. so I can just keep reusing it. That's why I kind of like that. I suppose you could still do that with like your pieces of paper towel or your muffin liner, coffee filter, or whatever. Because if you're using it for the same food product, you just wouldn't be able to wash it out and reuse it, or you might destroy it. I'm assuming. So anyway, I'm wondering if there was anything else I wanted to cover on this. Uh, but yeah, there's lots of great like beet powder. I've done a video on beet powder, or I've made beet powder from my homemade beets that I had, or homegrown beets that I had then made a beet kvass out of, and then took the beets and dehydrated them up and then powdered them down and was using more for coloring stuff. But I've also bought beet powder. And I'm trying to remember, was it, I think it was the Anthony's Goods that had a really good beet powder I liked. But I also got some from Azure Standard. There's a difference between the two. So one is just pure, is like it's just pure whole beet powder. That's the stuff I got from Azure Standard. And so it's going to have a lot more of that beet flavor. Where the other one from Anthony's is a beet juice powder. So it's from beets that have been juiced, or the juice has been extracted, and then that was powdered up, and that has a much sweeter flavor. So that is a better one for using for flavoring uh and coloring your foods, because the flavor is much sweeter. It doesn't have as much of that rooty flavor as your whole beet powder does. So I have them both, and I've used them both in similar ways to just add to water and see how it tastes. And I don't mind either one; they're both good. But like I said, the Anthony's with their the beet juice powder has just a better overall flavor if you're wanting to make it as a drink and add whatever you want to it, ferment it, make a fizzy drink out of it. So what else? Was there anything else I wanted to touch on? But those are a few ideas. Now I know a lot of people have been throwing ideas out there and I haven't seen them all, but maybe that hopefully that people when they watch the chat. Oh, here's something I gotta say about the chat. When the live show ends, the the chat does not always show up right away. And so people are like, I don't see the chat. Well, if you watch it right after the live show ends, the chat is most likely not going to show. So you have to wait and come back later after the video's processed. Now, here's the frustrating thing about YouTube that I don't know why lately, that it doesn't matter how long or short the video is. It's been taking like 12, 15 hours for the videos to process. And I can't download them. I can't do anything with them. I can't deselect the mid-roll ads until it finishes processing. So usually not till sometime the next morning. It's really frustrating. Well, maybe 15 hours is an exaggeration, but yeah, I mean, it takes all the rest of the afternoon, all night long into the morning. I check in the morning and finding I can do it. Maybe it's only 8 hours or maybe it's only 6, but I have to go to bed at some time. I can't stay up all night and wait for that thing to get done just so I can deselect the mid-roll ads and download the video. But yeah, lip balm coloring. I think I mentioned that in the video that I linked to at the top down below, or even like a rouge. I think by itself would be a little much. So it'd be something you'd want to blend with maybe even like a cocoa powder, so it's not quite so, red. But I've never used it that way. I think I've used it as played around with it in my homemade lip balm to see how the color looked. Yeah, that's probably, Tammy, is most likely because if you're watching it right after it's live, the chat isn't going to show until it's done processing. And sometimes it just takes hours. Or you got to make sure you go up and check the chat. Sometimes it's just a matter of checking a little thing at the top that says show chat. Like even right now where you see it says top chat. If you click on that, you'll notice you have an option of top chat, live chat, and then the like if you're wanting to see the fan funding, like who donated money, you can see that, or at least I can. But at any rate, Some say that if you click on live chat, you'll see more of the chat than the top chat. Typically, I never see any difference when I do that, at least on my own. But I've seen that happen before. It's like, what? People are reading these chats. I'm not seeing all these comments in here. And then I found out you gotta make sure you select live chat for everything to show. I don't always remember to do that. So let's see. I think I covered everything on my powders that I was going to talk about. But again, let me say this one more time, that if you'd like to learn more about making and using different powders, I link to the main video where I talk about a whole bunch of different powders like I did today and how I make and use them. But I also have the specific videos, some of them linked down below, but there's a lot more out there. Like I don't think I linked to the horseradish powder video, but it's all the same. You dehydrate it, you powder it up, you use it. How you use it's going to be up to you, but I also try to give a lot of great ideas on how to use the different powders. And then for like the dairy powders, whether you buy them or make them yourself, I have a video, that's a newer one, just on how I like to use them in different ways that you can use them yourself. So, even if you don't like to like if you don't like using powdered milk to make milk that you're going to add to cereal or drink, which I'm not a milk drinker. Last time I was a milk drinker, I was too young to remember because for as long as I can remember, I've hated to drink milk, except for on a rare occasion. But I have tried, if I get a good quality whole milk powder, I actually don't mind drinking that sometimes. I don't mind the flavor. It's actually can be pretty good, which surprises me because I just hated just plain milk. I didn't mind if it was chocolate milk or something like that, but just to drink plain milk to me was always so nasty growing up. I don't know why. Because I loved everything dairy. If you diameter, I think I don't remember exactly, but I think if you go to my video on the pumpkin powder, I should cover it in there. I don't remember. I never can remember offhand exactly how much. Even with the eggs, I have it. Like I forgot to say it in the video, so I had to put it in text and then also add it in the in the pinned comment below the video. But I don't remember